this is Margaret Lee, Special People and Places. I'm downtown Jasper, Alabama. I'm at the table with Debbie Young Sanders, and she has a special house guest this week, don't you, Debbie?
Yes, I do. I am just delighted to have Tandy Cronyn in my home. She's such a delightful lady, and it's been my privilege to be a hostess to her.
Tandy, it's so nice to meet you. Tell the viewers who your parents are.
So yes, they couldn't deny me an open court, but Jessica Tandy and Hugh Cronyn, and it was a kind of an old family sort of custom. My father came from Canada, and his name, Hume, which was his father's name, but originally that was the maiden name of a family that married into the Cronyn family. So usually they did it with boys, but with me, they gave me my mother's maiden name and her stage name as my Christian name. And so I grew up first in California, where I was born, but then when I was 4 or 5 years old, they moved east to go back into the theater. So I'm very glad that I grew up in New York, because I went to a wonderful school there. And this weekend became a little Brearley reunion, because one of your other guests, Brooke Ashley, née Brooke Sewell, she came also with a friend, and all three of us, it was a mini reunion of 3 Brearley girls. We all went to the same school, and we meet in Jasper, Alabama, which I found somehow very suitable.
Tandy, what a wonderful story. And here you are in Tallulah's hometown, not actually born here, but she grew up here. Oh my goodness, this is just wonderful, isn't it? And tomorrow, you'll be here again.
Yes, I'll be here tomorrow.
We will be here, Tandy. Can't wait for that. We're just so delighted you're here. And this lucky woman, I'm so jealous. Barbara, couldn't you do something about that? This is Barbara Metters.
Yes, we have so enjoyed having all of our lovely new friends with us at the Bankhead House. We are so excited. So excited.
Had you ever been here before, Tandy?
I don't think I'd ever been to Jasper, but when I was starting out, when I was in my 20s, I a couple of times did extensive tours with Broadway shows that went sent on tour. The musical Cabaret, the original Broadway production, was sent on a bus and truck tour, which I did when I was 23. And then a couple of years later, I also did the tour of the Stephen Sondheim Musical Company. And I'm sure we played Birmingham and or Montgomery. Unfortunately, I would give anything to have the itinerary of those tours, because I played all over the United States and also into Canada. Certainly with the Cabaret tour, and it was a shorter tour that I did with company. And I know we toured all through the South. So not Jasper, but probably Birmingham and or Montgomery.
Through your relationship with the godchild of Tallulah, did you know about Jasper?
No, and Brooke and I didn't really know one another at school, because she was a couple of years behind me. So, I mean, I would have known her to see in the hallway, but we weren't friends. We didn't meet until many years later. I did the inaugural season at the Denver Center Theater Company, which her father, Don Sewell, was a huge influence in getting that theater company started in Denver. I mean, the Denver Center Theater Company, the main stage is called the Helen Bonfils Theater. And Don Sewell, as you probably know, was Helen Bonfils' lawyer, much the same as he was for Tallulah. And he also, after her death, he was in charge of her estate. And she was a major contributor to and supporter of that theater. And that was a magical first season, because nobody does this anymore, but it did rotating repertory. So we did a season of, you know, a Shakespeare, a Moliere, a more contemporary play, but you did a different play every night. And not many companies can afford to do that. It's very expensive to do rotating rep, but it's wonderful, both for the audience and for the actors. And so in the company was Brooke's brother, Brock Sewell, and of course, so yeah, I got to know the whole family.
Well, we're looking forward to tomorrow.
My junior year in high school, my parents had taken off, as they often did. They toured a lot, but in this case, they went off to Minneapolis for the season to open the inaugural season of the Guthrie Theater. The Guthrie Theater was founded by Sir Jerome Guthrie. He's actually an Irishman, originally from the British Theater. My mother had worked with him when she was first starting out in Great Britain. And he founded the Stratford Festival of Canada, and then decided that he should do something similar to that in the United States, and he founded the Guthrie Theater, which is one of our great resident theater companies in Minneapolis. So I was in a day school in New York. I went to a wonderful private school for girls called Brearley. And this visit to Jasper, I had a mini reunion because Brooke Ashley, whom I think you heard last night, and her friend Susan, who came, we all went to Brearley. So we had a mini reunion here in Jasper, Alabama. It's probably the largest collection of Brearley girls ever gathered in Jasper, Alabama. And we had a wonderful time. So my parents went off, and I said, no, I'm not going to boarding school. I want to stay and graduate from Brearley. So I got farmed out to my godparents. I went to live with Robert and Virginia Whitehead, and they entertained a lot. I mean, they practically ran a salon. And people like Arthur Miller came to dinner, great designers, directors. So as a 17-year-old, I got to sit at the dinner table and listen to the most fascinating and erudite theater talk any 17-year-old could ever hope to listen to. And one night they had a dinner party. I had the guest room, which was actually up a flight of stairs. It was a duplex apartment, absolutely beautiful. And I got out of my school uniform, and I changed into a very nice pink silk dress. And I came down the stairs, which led right into the living room. And now Tallulah Bankhead was there. It was 1963. I think it's probably 3 or 4 years before she died. She was very frail, not her usual, I think, ebullient self. But she did still have the most extraordinary stage whisper. And I think she was missing the kind of limelight that she enjoyed during most of her professional life. And so she saw this, I was a pretty teenager, she saw this pretty teenage girl coming down the stairs in a very nice silk frock, and whispered in a voice that could be heard throughout the apartment, "Who is she? She must be a movie star." So I said, "How do you do?" to her. We didn't have any fascinating conversation. She was, I think, uncharacteristically quiet, but I did, in fact, get to meet her. So that's all my father had to say about Tallulah. On the other hand, I met Hitchcock more than once. He and my father were very good friends. When my father, it was at the time that he married my mother, it was then, both of them had been New York theater actors. My mother originally from England, but my father had done all kinds of Broadway plays, and most of them flopped. And then he developed, well, that's what it was like then. There wasn't anything much in the way of television. There was definitely the film industry, but the film industry didn't compete with live theater the way it does now, for the audience's attention. And also I think the deciding factor is that by this time, my father had met Alfred Hitchcock, and that was a really important relationship. He wrote for Hitchcock, They were very good friends, and of course he also acted for him. And he got his first really wonderful film role from Hitchcock, and that was Shadow of a Doubt. And so they moved to Hollywood. So when I was born, my parents were both under a contract to studios. By the time I was 4 or 5, they had decided that Hollywood really wasn't what they wanted to do with their careers for the rest of their life, so they moved back east. Anyway, I wanted to read you a little excerpt from my father's autobiography. He wrote quite a bit. I mean, not only did he do screenplay treatments for Hitchcock, but he actually sat down and wrote this autobiography, which is quite well written.
Somewhere in this period, I was loaned out by MGM to Fox to appear in a film called Lifeboat. It wasn't one of my more rewarding roles, but that didn't matter. I was back with Hitchcock again. This film was an uncomfortable one to make, physically uncomfortable because of its nature. 9 of us huddled together in a lifeboat on frequently stormy seas for the best part of 3 months. To call it close quarters would be an understatement. No part of the film was actually shot at sea. It was made entirely either in the studio or in a tank on the back lot at Fox. This tank had a chute at each of its 4 corners, the kind of chute you might see in miniature at a children's playground. At the top of each chute was a container holding 4,000 gallons of water. When the contents of all 4 containers were released simultaneously, 16,000 gallons of water hit the tank below in a cataract that completely buried the boat below and overwhelmed its occupants. The boat was held in relatively stable position by a maze of underwires. The actors weren't. On the soundstage, the lifeboat was mounted on a mechanical rocker and sat about 8 feet off the stage floor. You got in and out of the boat by ladder. Behind the boat was a process screen on which was projected the sky, scudding clouds, and the rolling sea in all its moods. The rocker had to move the boat in a manner appropriate to the wave conditions shown on the process.
I just want to add that this also meant, Hitchcock was a genius. He composed the film in its entirety in his head. So before he started shooting, he knew exactly what the camera angles were going to be, how much he needed of this shot of you, how much he needed the reverse angle of the other person in the conversation, so that when he finished shooting the film and went to edit it, very little of the film ended up on the cutting room floor.
Sometimes pitching wildly, sometimes rolling gently, occasionally in a flat calm. There was a large demand for anti-seasickness pills among the actors. The film posed technical difficulties that were meat and drink to Hitchcock. He rejoiced in solving them. Because the process screen placed sharp limitations on his camera angles, you could rarely lose the screen except in close-up. Hitchcock compensated by the variety of his compositions. At one time, he had been an art director. He could draw. Hanging on the camera dolly was a clipboard holding a pad of legal-size plain paper with each sheet divided into 3 sections by perforations. In the center of each section was printed a square simulating a frame of film. Hitch could reach for the clipboard, rapidly sketch in the desired composition, tear off the section, hand it to the cameraman, and say, "This is what I want." It was a skill I had never seen before or since, and it saved an enormous amount of time in discussing camera position, lenses, and the positioning of actors. Everything was there on that piece of paper. The cast of Lifeboat was impressive, but its leading lady was the leading lady, and no one was allowed to
be the bass pitch that rose to a genuine scream. "Don't you speak to me like that! Old ham!" I swear the stage walls trembled and leaned outward. The company was paralyzed. Hitch quickly went to the water cooler. He hated confrontations. An occasional blow up on a set
where all day long, day after day, actors are wet, uncomfortable, and too closely confined can be forgiven. For instance, we all had about 6 changes of identical wardrobe. The theory was that at least one of them would always be dry. It was a fine theory. In practice, I found that by 3 in the afternoon, I would be sitting in the rays of a brute, one of those enormous 2,000-watt lamps used for simulating sunlight, trying to dry out and keep warm. As I said, blow-ups are forgivable, providing they're not habitual. Later in the film, word reached the set that the Italians had capitulated and that Mussolini had fled. Walter Slezak, an Austrian who gave a superb performance as the captured German U-boat captain, which was, I suspect, a contributing factor to the obvious hostility Tallulah felt toward him, said something like, "Well, thank God that part's over. Perhaps it will spare more unnecessary bloodshed." Again, Tallulah went through her cobra phase. She wheeled on Walter.
I hope they all stay spilling in trouble German ladies. I hate them all and I hate you!
And again the stage walls quivered. There was a deathly hush, followed by Walter's reasonable voice. "I'm sorry about that, Tallulah." Miss Bankhead was not a believer in underwear, not even panties. She was also a born exhibitionist.
She was also a born exhibitionist. The ladder into the lifeboat was portable and steep, and Tallulah had to hike up her narrow skirt to climb it. She hiked it up to her waist. The first few times this happened, the crew were startled. After that, they yawned. They'd seen it all before, and most of the actors would have taken their positions in the boat before Tallulah arrived. I was lying in the bottom of the boat one day, which meant that Tallulah had to step over me. She glanced down at me and said, "Getting a little rough here?" I muttered something non-committal, and afterwards wished I'd had the courage to say, "Yes, give me a stick and I'll kill it." Which was the punchline to one of Hitch's more bawdy jokes.
Yourself had an inauguration last year. All familiar faces and noticed in your bio.
Oh, yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
What's familiar faces is I belong to a playwrights group, not as a playwright. She's asking about an award nomination that I got last year. Or actually, it's 2 years ago now. I got it in 2014, but it was for a play that I did on the Fringe. It's the Fringe Festival. This is all on Broadway. Or they now rename themselves Independent Theater. I belong to a playwrights group that meets twice a month. I don't write, but I frequently go. I very often read the plays that these playwrights are bringing to hear for the first time and get feedback from their colleagues on how to further develop their scripts. There's a playwright in that group that I just think walks on water. And I've done a lot of his readings, but there's one play which we already done a reading of, but he got a production of it on Fringe called Old Familiar Faces. And the play jumps back and forth between Charles and Mary Lamb, brother and sister who live together, and a contemporary acting couple who are Shakespearean actors. And both the women, Mary Lamb was bipolar, and her brother, and she did a Lizzie Borden. She killed her mother and was institutionalized. But as soon as she got better, which she always did, there weren't any laws then about the criminal thing, and they were happy to just release her into her brother's custody. And she was in and out of institutions all her life, and he never married her, devoted his life to looking after her. And the contemporary couple are Shakespearean actors, loosely based on somebody like Laurence Olivier and Vivian Leigh. Now, Vivian Leigh, she played Blanche Dubois in the movie. She's done it in England, and also there's Gone with the Wind. But she was bipolar. So it's a play wife and Shakespeare into this kind of marvelous tapestry. And so we did it as part of the Fringe Festival, and I got a nomination for, you know, an outstanding performance by an actress in a leading role, of which I'm very proud. What's that? Production of West Side Story, The Music Man. My mom took me to see Shakespeare at the time, starting at 11 or 12. I went once to the old Met. It's Cronyn, but that place was torn down because it had perfect acoustics. But I saw Aida at the old Metropolitan Club. And of course I saw the four-poster countless times.
Were you and your parents kind of hounded the paparazzi today versus then?
When I was growing up, we were theater stars. You know, occasionally somebody would recognize my father from having played Captain Mumsy in Brute Force. And he did so much better in Hollywood than she did, so he was nowhere in all the Hitchcock films. As theater stars, you know, we don't do it. And also, I mean, it was a different era. I mean, there were presentations. They didn't behave the way they do now. It was a kind of gentler time. You know, we might be in a restaurant and usually a nice elderly or middle-aged couple of theater goers might come up and say, you know, forgive us for interrupting, but we so enjoy your work in the theater. And you know, that would be that. It was never, it's not like it is now. Finally, you know, when my mother had done the Cocoon movies and Driving Miss Daisy, and, you know, suddenly I realized that life was different because I think I got on the subway with her. We were in London, probably on our way to the Berlin Film Festival, where they showed Driving Miss Daisy, and that year was the first time that the Berlin Film Festival happened on both sides of the wall. So we saw the film with the Western audience, who of course used to seeing films like this, and then we went over and we saw on the east side of the wall. And it was electric. They didn't laugh. It was like they were holding their breath. Because they'd never been allowed to see stuff like this before. But when we were on the subway in London, suddenly I realized that, you know, down at the end of the car, there's a bunch of teenagers, young 20s, and they've got pink hair, and, you know, a safety pin in their ear, and they're like, how do you do it? And I thought, oh, it's a different world.
Tandy, your parents, this wonderful couple, I encourage everybody to look up you and Tandy on the internet. They are incredibly attractive people. And the last few years, we just remember them being a little older, but very, very attractive couple. They are wonderful. And your father, I understood from the bio, he had studied law. And so he was kind of going in that direction, but your father is from a family in government in London, Ontario, Canada.
Yes, I mean, I think they expected me to do something like